We are having a complete breakdown in this country of intellectual property protection. That's how I came to be an IP advocate and working with Fair Inventing, which is a nonprofit. And what we do is we try to support and do some litigation support for companies like my own that have been destroyed by bigger companies infringing and stealing our intellectual property.
Welcome to the Fully Mindful podcast. I'm your host, Melissa. I designed this podcast for you. I'm so happy you're here. We are talking about what it means to live with more intention, creativity, and authenticity so we can make aligned connections. I'm a neurodivergent lawyer turned coach who found the healing power of breathwork and the powerful impact of mindfulness as we navigate this wild and beautiful ride of life. Here at The Fully Mindful, we dive deep with inspiring guests, share solo mini-sodes that are packed with tools you can apply immediately, and I mix it up a bit with tangents and sidebars where my friend and host of the New World Normal podcast, Debbie Harrell, joins us for some down-to-earth, sometimes random, but always meaningful conversations. If you're ready to breathe, reflect, and grow, you're in the right place. Let's get fully mindful. All right, welcome to The Fully Mindful. This is Melissa Chareau, your host, and this is where we dive into how to live with more authenticity, creativity, and connection. Today, I'm thrilled to be speaking with Juliette Fassett, CEO of Happy Products, Inc., and Intellectual Property Advocate here in Portland, Oregon. What else can I say about Juliette? She's a badass entrepreneur, a good friend, a hell of an advocate, and cooks mean chicken tikka masala, and also happens to be I think she was in one of the first cohorts of the positive intelligence programs that I ran in the early summer with a cohort of other smart and amazing women. And I'm really excited to have her here to talk a little bit about what she does and what her experience was in the positive intelligence program. And I just realized I might have butchered her last name because even though we've been friends for like 25 years or something like that, I don't say her last name.
You did.
So I did just fine. Okay.
Fassett, yeah.
Fassett, yeah. So yeah, CEO of Happy Products. And you've also been an entrepreneur for, I don't know, a couple decades, right?
Well, yeah, 30.
Yeah, a couple, 3 decades, something like that, not to give away ages or anything.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Since the ripe age of 3, you've been an entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, how did that happen? How did you become an entrepreneur? It's not for the faint of heart. So
No, it's not. And I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, and I don't encourage people to become entrepreneurs. You know, the thing is, if you are smart and you're a smart ass and you have a little bit of a little bit of a disdain for rules and doing things by rote, then you don't make a great employee. And I never made a really good employee. So you have to figure out how to make a living. And so I had my first business when I was 23, started my first business. And then I did go on to spend a little bit of time behind the corporate wall, but that lasted less than 2 years. And,
you have a little problem with authority, maybe, huh?
Yeah, a little problem with authority. Yep, you could say that. Yeah. So you got to figure out a way to make a living. And I have my passions, about business and consumer products and problem-solving products. So it was kind of a natural fit. It hasn't always been easy, but I have managed to make something of a living a couple of years.
Yeah.
You got to have somebody to balance you out with. I mean, unless you are a spectacularly successful entrepreneur, which I would say I am sort of successful, but being married to someone who is an engineer and has full employment, has always been fully employed and provides the benefits for the family, that's how I've been able. And having older stepchildren so that my kids were out of the house really young when I was still quite young. I think that all kind of contributed to me being able to continue to do what I do.
Yeah. I mean, you're hyper creative. You have a very creative engineer husband, and you were in a position where you were supported in that creativity and in those endeavors.
Right. I mean, if I wasn't married to him, I would still be probably doing what I'm doing, but I would have a much different lifestyle.
Right.
So, and I'd have lots of cats.
And you'd be that cat lady. Instead, you get to be a horse lady because you get to ride horses and have that passion as well.
I get to have one horse. Yes.
Yeah. And you get to have a dog as well.
Yeah.
And so many years ago, you and your husband actually put together a product that has become pretty successful, and you put it out on the market, and you have been wheeling and dealing that thing for quite a while, right?
Yep. Going on, let's see. We first applied for our provisional patent, I think, in 2013. So,
wow.
We've been at it for 10 years. And my sellout on QVC was in November of 2018.
And this is for none other than what is called the Flippy, the wonderful Flippy. Yeah. Flippy. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the positive intelligence program. But I think people need to know about this product. It's so awesome.
Well, Flippy, and I don't have one actually right here. Flippy is the result. It was a result of a couple of things. One was that someone asked me to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. Someone said to me, a buyer for a catalog company said, "We think that there is space in the market for more tablet stand products, and we think that the tablet stand category is going to grow." And having come from a background in fashion accessories, I had an idea about manufacturing things related to textiles, mm-hmm. but I had never developed something from the ground up myself because I had always worked with designers. So I just set about deciding that I was going to solve this problem and come up with a solution. And it took a very long time. Yeah. And I went back and forth on it. And then when I finally came up with this concept, which was for a product that is not made of metal parts and doesn't have any moving parts, and it allows you to use the same product whether you're sitting, standing, or laying in bed. Mm-hmm. When I finally came up with the concept for it, I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And I showed it to Bruce, and I said, when you have a triangle that's non-equidistant, the sides are not even, and then you flip it, it does this. And then when you flip it again, it does this. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but let's make a CAD drawing of this thing and see what it looks like in 3D. So we made a 3D model, and that was it. I was like, oh, this thing is amazing. And it took a long, even after we came up with the model and what became the final form factor, it still took 1.5 years to get it figured out and figure out how to get it made and everything. That was impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was years of development. But then, also another bunch of years trying to get people to pay attention to it. And I was selling it slowly to this catalog company. They were buying a couple hundred units during the holiday, and they always sold out. And it was really expensive because I was making it in such low volume. And then I finally, after getting the door slammed in my face for 3 years at QVC, I finally got somebody where the light went on. And even the buyers at QVC were very tepid about it, but they tested it, and it tested really well. And then in November of 2018, we sold $500,000 worth of product in 12 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And we sold the same day, we sold $40,000 worth of product on Amazon. And that was more than we had ever sold on Amazon, period, in the entire history of a couple of years of selling on Amazon. $40,000 in a day was huge, absolutely huge. So we were off and running. And then, of course, we got ripped off, and I've been fighting the rip-offs ever since.
Yes. And that is another huge story that we could spend 5 episodes of this podcast talking about, for sure. And another reason why entrepreneurship can be so difficult, especially for a small business person, right? Because
it's absolutely impossible.
This is what happens. We have these big fish who their business model is to find small fish who have really good products and to just gobble them up.
Yep.
And just gobble, gobble, gobble. And that's their business model.
We are having a complete breakdown in this country of intellectual property protection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I came to be an IP advocate and working with Fair Inventing, which is a nonprofit. And what we do is we try to support and do some litigation support for companies like my own that have been destroyed by bigger companies infringing and stealing our intellectual property.
Yeah. I think I'd like to put some stuff in the show notes in case there's anybody out there listening who would like to know more about that and how they can get some help with some advocacy, because I think it's such an important topic.
Absolutely.
And we're just barely touching on that. And that wasn't really the point of this episode, but just in case people need some help with that.
It's a whole big rabbit hole, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So we did want to talk about how you came to be interested in the positive intelligence coaching program that I launched. I think it was in early summer this year, and just wondered what, when I pitched it to you as a possibility, what interested you about it.
I didn't know anything about it when you pitched. I had never heard of it before, and I wasn't familiar with this work. And all I knew was that, just like everybody else these days, I have my problems with stress, some actually really profound and serious problems with stress. And I'll try anything to try to stay sane and whole and try to keep from getting swallowed up into everything that is the technology in our lives these days.
Yeah.
And it sounded accessible. Sometimes these things sound to me, they're too big of a commitment. Yeah. And the fact that we could do it from our own home, so I didn't have to get in the car and drive somewhere in traffic and worry about parking. I thought, wow, if it works, if it's relatable in this form factor of doing it online, then why not?
Yeah. Yeah. And we did this in a very small group. So there was just a small, I think there were maybe 5 of you, women only, in that particular group. And so it made it a little bit cozy, right?
No, it was a great size. It was very manageable.
Yeah.
Well run.
Hey everyone, I'm excited to announce my 8-week positive intelligence program, the PQ program, starting February 25th to reduce stress, break through barriers, and tap into your true potential. With just 1 to 2 hours a week, you'll quiet inner saboteurs, strengthen your inner sage self, and build lasting mental fitness through live meetings, daily exercises in the PQ app, and powerful practices. Ready to transform? Set up a call with me today in the Calendly link in the show notes. We'll see you there. Well, so what did you think about this idea? We started off talking about our saboteurs, and you don't necessarily have to talk about your particular saboteurs, but this idea that we all have saboteurs, generally run by the ringleader of the judge, who's like always yammering on about whether we're judging ourselves or somebody else or our circumstances, and kind of getting the other saboteurs, the other 9 saboteurs, to hop on the bus and drive the bus down the road, much to our chagrin, right?
Yeah.
And so what did you think of that idea, that whole premise of figuring out who our saboteurs are and kind of figuring out their stories?
The thing that I really liked about that part of it was that this is all stuff that if you've been to therapy in some way, shape, or form, you are kind of familiar with it. Mm-hmm. But this was in a way that was a little bit more, I don't want to say lighthearted, but it was treated in a little bit more of I guess maybe it wasn't quite so intimidating to me because we were doing it as a group and everybody else acknowledged, oh yeah, I have these problems too. When you're in therapy by yourself, you're always, it's all about you. And I'm the only one that feels this way. And I'm such a mess. But when you're doing it in a group and everybody's like, oh, fuck it, we're all a mess, it's a little bit different. So I kind of enjoyed that format. I had never participated in I've done some group stuff, but never something like that before. So it was refreshing and not so heavy.
I think that that's such a good point, right? That sometimes it's helpful to see how other people are experiencing their saboteurs. And even if it's a different saboteur, you're like, oh God, I'm not the only crazy person here, right?
Well,
Like
yeah. And then
other
I
people are
thought, oh my
experiencing this.
God, these people are so hard on themselves.
Right.
And I don't feel like, I mean, everybody's hard on themselves, but I don't feel like I am particularly hard on myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw some other people that I thought, oh my God, they are really hard on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of was good to have that contrast too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Just to see how they were treating themselves and maybe then even reflecting on, I wonder if I say anything like that to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You.
Yeah. Some of the things that people shared, I completely empathized with.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the things that people shared, while I couldn't relate to it from my own behavior and my own brain, was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. If nothing else, it does kind of build the empathy muscle, right?
Completely.
Yeah. Did you feel like you learned any particular tools about how to intercept your own saboteurs so that you could understand them or be aware of them more?
I don't know if there was anything specifically, but just the exercise of examining them
Mm-hmm.
was helpful,
Yeah.
thinking about it, because I'm not in therapy now. And I think I told you that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do the class, was because I'm not in therapy and I could use some help getting out of my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Don't we all?
yeah. So it was just a good contribution. And as part of it, examining the saboteurs is really helpful.
Right. Yeah. And the program also really emphasizes not just identifying the saboteurs, but so that we can activate the sage within ourselves, right? The sort of knowing, the all knowing person that has always been there, but kind of gets hidden, right, by all these saboteurs and what society and culture and education and media and all that stuff does to us. And so we ended up exploring things like the sage powers of empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, activate. And did you feel like being able to explore some of those sage powers within you was helpful?
Absolutely. You know, you have these powers in you, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't identify them in those different buckets.
Right.
So sometimes I'll have a thought, and for example, just the other day, I said something to someone and he said, oh my God, you just blew my mind with what you just said. And I said, I have to sit down and think about that for a second. And I was laughing. And he said, that is so sage, what you just said. And I was like, is it? It was just kind of obvious to me.
Mm-hmm.
And having that recognized in that example, having an external recognition, was one of the first times since our class that I felt like, oh, and I kind of, the sort of the bell went off. Oh, yeah, that was the sage. I need to go back and remind myself that that's in there.
Yeah.
And pay more attention when she shows up.
Right. And maybe even, I don't know if this is the right word, but celebrate that, right? Like recognize
bit,
it. Yeah. And be like, yeah, that's me. Yeah. Look at her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was actually really cool. It actually has happened a couple of times recently where I've had people say, what somebody said to me just 2 days ago, whenever we meet, you always say that you're out of your depth, but I don't see any indication of that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, God, I got to stop. That's one of my saboteurs, right?
Right.
I got to stop doing that, because it's such a, well, I suppose it's such a female thing. And also, given our age, well, my age anyway, sort of not wanting to praise ourselves or being afraid to come across as too strong, right?
Right. But it's okay to be in our power, right? To acknowledge it. There's nothing wrong with that. And if anything, it gives other people's permission, other women, to be in their strength and their power, right?
Absolutely. So that was just another example of the saboteur showing up and me kind of going, put that back.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you notice you're about to say, oh, I'm out of my depth here, you just like, oh, thanks, saboteur. That's really interesting that you're here. I think I'm going to think I'm just going to nip that one in the bud and just.
Well, and yes. And what was funny is that it was a very, how do I say this? A big, like a VIP, somebody who had run a multi-billion-dollar governmental agency. And because it was him saying it, I got to cut the shit.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to undersell myself, especially to people like that.
Especially to people like that, but just in general, right? And
right.
And I mean, you're this badass entrepreneur and also this intellectual property advocate. Like, you are not out of your depth, period.
Well, not for most of the stuff that I'm dealing with. No.
You just not?
No, I'm not.
You know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's great that you're still noticing that, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I am still noticing it.
And that's the thing. This work, it's not like it's a destination. It's not like we finish.
You don't get there. You never get there.
Right. The man who developed this work, Shirzad Kamine, and he talks about that all the time. He's like, I'm still doing the work. I developed this work. And he recently reconfigured the program altogether. Right. And I think that speaks volumes. Right. So they have a new iteration of the program. They beta tested it. And now there's this whole new, it's more or less the same, but they've improved it. Why?
Right.
Because that's what you do. Right.
Yeah.
You continually improve it. You continually do the work yourself, and you're never done, right?
I think that having him share his own examples of this work, his journey and how he came to create it, that was particularly appealing too.
Right.
So getting to know the man behind the work and being able to see him and hear him speak, even if it wasn't in person, I thought was great.
Yeah. And I think hearing everybody's stories, whether they were yours, the other members, mine, I think that can be really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually, I'm at a point now where I kind of preferred it to one-on-one therapy. It's just a little more active.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something to the small group that is really.
And having a little bit of homework and something to think about is good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the fact that there's an app and there's an opportunity for a daily focus on the app, and it's nothing too strenuous, but there's stuff to do, stuff to focus on.
Yeah. And it's not a lot. It's a tiny little thing.
Right. It's not like go home and meditate for 2 hours and then write in your journal for 5.
It is no big deal. And that's part of the other appealing part of this program was that it was such a small commitment, but with a really big impact.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think I added? This is my own part of the process. I love conscious connected breath work. And as you know, I added that in as hey, we're just going to release whatever we dusted up here, whatever saboteurs we dusted up. We are just going to release that shit. And we are going to just access our sage in 1 hour of crazy ass breath work. And so wondering what you thought about that aspect of the program.
I totally loved it.
Good.
I think we all did, everybody that participated. I just thought it was awesome. And I have done a little bit of breath work in yoga class before, but not an intense process like we did. And I think adding it together at the end of our class was just really helpful. It was like the cherry on top.
Yeah, we'll send it with the cherry on top.
A little bit of a graduation ceremony.
Yeah, that was definitely the point. It's just like and to try to describe what this is, I think you have to experience it to really fully appreciate the impact that it can have on you.
The other thing about it is that this work is so much, as we say in intellectual property, labor of the mind, right? So you're working on your head, but by integrating the breath work, it connects the two. So it brings it out of your head and into your body, and it's the whole picture, right? So to me, they're kind of opposite sides of the same coin.
Right. No, that makes sense. What would you say to someone who was considering doing this program?
Oh my God. I mean, I wouldn't even hesitate. If you're stressed out and you're just looking for a break and something fresh, something that is a little bit of a challenge intellectually, something that's going to have you kind of confront some things in a very mild fashion, I would highly suggest it. And I've recommended it to other people.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it and I got a lot out of it.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate your time and talking about it. I know you're a busy entrepreneur and a busy wife and a busy dog mom and horse mom.
You got to go feed her. Barking.
And I'd love to have you on again to actually talk a little bit more, to the extent that you can, about your intellectual property advocacy, because I think that's a really important topic. And I'd love to have you on to talk a little bit more about that if you'd be interested.
Absolutely. I'd be really happy to. It's really important work, and we're doing everything we can to get people to pay more attention to it. I have a reporter from Inc. magazine coming out next month to interview me.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And this litigation that I'm in is huge.
It is huge and ongoing. And so I won't ask you questions that you can't answer, but I'm dying to
We're just getting off the ground with it. So there's really not much to tell. It's still in the sort of getting organized phase. I don't think anybody's filed any motions yet. We were requested to dismiss one filing. And so we're going back and forth on whether or not we're going to dismiss. So it's lawyers going back and forth. You know the drill.
Oh, I sure do. Well, all sorts of opportunities for you to use your positive intelligence training and use all those PQ reps that you learned to do to keep yourself sane and grounded and centered and through all that craziness. And use all those tools to keep your head above water and feel good about what you're doing.
We all have to try. It's just a bizarro time we're living through. Yeah. Not that any time isn't bizarro, but it feels, I think I'm not the only one. I think a lot of us feel like the world is coming apart at the seams, and maybe our own worlds are coming apart at the seams. And anything you can do, like I said in the beginning, to stay sane and stay grateful for what you have is terrific.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to keep on keeping on, and we can do so. And even in crazy times, we can find moments to find gratitude, appreciate one another, and enjoy our friendships and our relationships and our time with our loved ones, our furry ones, and all the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. I'll sign off now, and we will get you back here in short order. And can't wait for people to listen to our episode.
Thank you very much, Melissa. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you for joining me on the Fully Mindful podcast. If you got value from this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who'd love this content too. Remember, small moments of mindfulness can lead to big changes in your day-to-day life. Until next time, take a deep breath, stay present, and tap into your own mindfulness. I'll see you next week.